Now, from CBS News Miami, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Welcome to Facing South Florida. I'm Jim DeFede. In a little more than a week, vote-by-mail ballots will be sent out, and Floridians will begin making some critical decisions. And perhaps no decision will be as consequential as the vote on Amendment 4, which would eliminate Florida's 6-week abortion ban and reinstate a woman's ability to have an abortion up until viability, which is essentially 24 weeks. In other words, it would return Florida to what this state was like under Roe v. Wade before it was struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, Florida is one of 10 states that have abortion on the ballot this November, but while most states only require a simple majority, or 50%, to pass, Florida requires 60% approval. That's more than any other state and is an incredibly high threshold to reach. But apparently, that's not good enough for Governor Ron DeSantis, who is leading the charge against Amendment 4. He is using the state's official healthcare website to spread what his critics argue is misinformation about the amendment and the effects of the 6-week abortion ban that he pushed through the legislature, rather than just speak out against it, which is his right, and then let the people decide on their own. He is using state resources to mislead voters. In response, the Florida ACLU has filed a lawsuit against the state demanding they take down the site and stop using taxpayer dollars to sway voters. A hearing is scheduled for Wednesday in Tallahassee, and I recently spoke to Michelle Morton from the ACLU about why they brought this lawsuit.
What we saw was happening was that the state was interfering with Floridians' right to amend the Constitution, right? So Amendment 4 was proposed by Florida citizens. They have the right to propose amendments to the state constitution and to have a fair vote on those amendments. And this right is such an important check on the government's power. So then when that same government steps in and starts spreading misinformation about the amendment, that is clearly violating, Floridians' right to amend their constitution.
So you believe that the governor's actions and the actions by the state agency violate Florida's constitution?
Exactly. So Floridians have this right to amend the constitution. It is a check on government's power. And so when politicians aren't representing their constituents, those constituents can bring an important issue to Floridians for a vote. And that's exactly what's happened with Amendment 4. The state passed this extreme abortion ban, despite polling at the time showing that most Floridians did not want that. And Amendment 4 would reverse that and put a limit to government interference with abortion. So now the government is interfering with that right, or that vote. And so it's fighting to maintain this power over healthcare decisions. And in doing so, the state agency is using resources we as Floridians have trusted them with to campaign against an amendment proposed by its citizens. So this is a direct infringement on Floridians' right to propose and vote on these amendments.
So the hearing that is coming up this Wednesday, what are you asking for in that hearing for a judge to do?
So all we're asking for is a temporary injunction to pause things, take the misinformation down, stop spreading misinformation through advertisement while the case is proceeding, to ensure that the sponsor's right to propose this amendment is protected in this time, as is the voter's right to vote on the amendment free of this misinformation. And
just to be clear, you're not saying that Governor Ron DeSantis, if he wants to go out and campaign against the amendment, if he wants to go out and personally stand at a podium and cite and spread misinformation, he can do that. What you're saying is that you cannot use the resources of the government, the resources of the taxpayers of Florida, to campaign against a constitutional amendment that its citizens are bringing.
Right. The ACLU fights for everyone's right to free speech. And this isn't about a single person. If anything, it's about the countless women and doctors who've been standing up and saying this is how this current extreme ban is impacting their lives. And then having the state come back in and say, no, it's not, and calling them liars. So it's not about a single person. People can say whatever they want to say, but at the end of the day, there needs to be a fair vote on this amendment.
And you think using state resources to essentially tell women that they're lying about their experiences, that's a step too far for you and the ACLU.
Absolutely. So, the government's misinformation campaign, it's furthering the cruelty of the current ban. So even as more and more women, husbands, doctors are going on record to share the ways the ban is impacting them, the government is using its platform to deny these very real, heartbreaking lived experiences. They can't justify the harm of the current law, so they're just denying it and lying about Amendment 4. But this has been going on for years now, that doctors have been sounding the alarm about the impact of these bans and their ability to provide care. And women are telling the state this, that they're being turned away from emergency rooms during medical crises, that they're being forced to carry doomed pregnancies to term and watch helplessly as their children suffer. And the state could fix this. Let's be clear. They could revise the law to make it clear, but they haven't. Instead, they're trying to mislead people, say, no, this isn't happening. Don't listen to these women and these doctors. Listen to the government and let us keep this power to decide when someone should be able to get an abortion.
Has there been a case like this before? I'm trying to remember going back through, we've had lots of constitutional amendments over the years. Have we ever seen anything similar where the governor's office or one of his agencies put out an entire website, ran a PR campaign as well, using taxpayer dollars to run commercials that essentially try to undermine the vote of the people?
Certainly not. This is, as far as we know, this is unprecedented to have use the power and the budget, frankly, of the state to attack a citizen's initiative. We've never seen this before, and it's not a good precedent. There's a reason we have this right, and we need to protect it. We do not need the government out there spreading misinformation to put their thumb on the scale on these amendments. But ultimately, the power belongs to Floridians. Each of us are going to have the right to vote yes on Amendment 4 and end the extreme ban and fight back against all of this government interference.
I also spoke to State Senator Lauren Book, who's been leading the efforts to pass Amendment 4. I asked for her reaction to what DeSantis is doing.
Look, I think that it's very clear that the administration is extremely concerned because they know and understand that a great portion of the population, over 60%, believe that Amendment 4 needs to pass. And they're doing anything that they can to really scare people into not wanting to support this amendment. Really, even with that, the website, you even think, and a colleague of mine, Senator Pizzo, was so correct, it's doxing. They even put up donors to Amendment 4 on this website. It's bananas to think the lengths that this administration is going to try to get people to vote no on Amendment 4 when we know the majority of Floridians support Amendment 4 and want to ensure that women have medical freedom in this state.
When I was talked earlier to the attorney for the ACLU that's filing suit, one of the points that she raised was the notion that here you have the state government essentially telling women that the experiences and the stories they have aren't true, that they're lying to the public if they say the following things take place. It's not just that this is part of a campaign. This is the government interfering even more directly in a process that is supposed to be the way the public amends its constitutions. This is the government interfering with that process. Do you agree?
Absolutely. 100%. I think it's time that politicians take a step back and allow the people to decide what happens. What is the fear here of allowing our population that are very smart, educated people? Floridians are very special, wonderful people who know what they're doing, who know what they believe, and have that right to exercise their beliefs, their wants, to put it and enshrine it in our Constitution. I don't understand the fear of it. I don't understand why the administration and the right are so afraid of allowing Floridians to go make their voices heard on Election Day. It blows my mind. It's scary, and it is an extreme overreach.
We will continue the conversation with Senator Book as we get into what the amendment actually does. That's next.